You've been lied to, not maliciously, not even intentionally, but lied to nonetheless. You were taught that if you just became the perfect man, calm, ambitious, emotionally intelligent, well-dressed, stoic, but sensitive, then love would stay. That if you mastered her love languages, if you responded just right, if you read enough relationship books and sent thoughtful, good morning texts, she would see you as irreplaceable. But she didn't, because she never wanted perfect. She wanted presence. And presence is not what you say, it's what you are. You followed the script. Be reliable, be gentle, never raise your voice. Ask her how she feels. Give her space, give her consistency, give her everything except your spine. And in the end, she left, not because you were a bad man, but because you were not a real one. You were careful, but you weren't true. You were kind, but you weren't rooted. You were polished, but you were predictable. And the truth no one told you is that predictable doesn't spark desire. Predictable doesn't lead. Predictable doesn't disrupt her nervous system in a way that makes her body lean forward without explanation. And here's where Nietzsche enters, not as a dating coach, but as a philosopher of truth. He didn't write about women, not directly. He wrote about masks, about men who surrendered their inner chaos to become socially acceptable, only to find themselves invisible to the very people they hoped to impress. He called it resentment, the hatred of oneself disguised as goodness, but empty, acceptable, but unseen. And when a woman senses that the man sitting across from her is wearing a mask, even a beautiful one, her heart closes. She may not know why. She may try to stay, but her body withdraws. Her soul goes quiet, and eventually she walks. Because of your flaws, but because you were afraid to show them. Because you were afraid to say no. Because you were always accommodating, never challenging. Always available, never mysterious. Always gentle, never anchored. You became what you thought she wanted, only to discover she didn't want what she thought she wanted. What she actually wanted was a man who challenged her emotionally. Not by being cruel, but by being so utterly himself that she has no choice but to feel herself more deeply in his presence. A man who does not seek her approval. A man who can make her laugh and make her pause. A man who can hold her gaze without flinching when she tests him. And she will test you, not because she's broken, but because she needs to feel your core. The feminine doesn't open for safety, allow it opens for strength. And strength is not how much you lift. It's how much truth you can hold without collapsing. Nietzsche called it the will to power, not power over others, but power over oneself. The ability to become, to endure, to stand alone in a world that wants to mold you. The man who's not trying to be perfect, who is willing to lose her rather than lose himself. Who loves her deeply, but never at the cost of his own voice. That man is unforgettable. That man is rare. That man is what she craves when she lies awake at night and questions everything. The man who walks away when his boundaries are crossed. The man who says, I hear you. I respect your feelings, but I'm not moving on this. The man who sees her completely, body, mind, heart, and still refuses to become smaller for her comfort. That man isn't always liked, but he is felt. And feeling, not liking, is what creates desire. You thought being the perfect man would make you lovable, but it made you replaceable, because it made you predictable, because it made you safe and not strong. She doesn't want a man who needs her. She wants a man who chooses her. And that difference is everything. The man who needs her can't stand on his own. Bends. He apologizes for things he didn't do. He lets her moods control the frame. He stops leading. And the moment she feels herself leading emotionally, she loses attraction. You never noticed it, but you let her become the man. And now you wonder why she's cold. You gave her control when what she wanted was containment, not restriction, but direction. She wants to melt into your clarity, and you kept asking her what to do. That's not presence, that's confusion. Nietzsche didn't teach men how to get women. He taught them how to become free. And freedom is sexy. Freedom is irresistible. Freedom is the man who walks with depth, speaks with economy, and moves with certainty. A man who listens but doesn't waver. A man who holds contradiction without panic. A man who can make her feel safe without becoming soft. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she stays for. Not the perfect one, the real one. The man with edges. The man who isn't always easy, but is always true. The man who doesn't always say the right thing, but who never says something he doesn't mean. The man who looks her in the eyes and doesn't flinch when she asks, "Why didn't you try harder to fix this?" And he replies calmly, "Because I'm not here to be fixed or to fix you. I'm here to be honest, and this is me." That kind of man doesn't need strategies. He doesn't need scripts. He doesn't need games, because he knows who he is. And in knowing himself, he gives her the one thing every woman hungers for in secret. Something real. The real man doesn't chase her. He doesn't need to. He creates a gravitational field so strong that the right women orbit him without being pulled. It's not because he's playing hard to get, but because his presence says everything his mouth doesn't. He's not interested in being desired. He's interested in being respected. And that distinction changes everything. When a man seeks desire, he molds himself into whatever will earn a response. He becomes attentive when she's distant. He becomes distant when she's attentive. He becomes reactive, calculated, hesitant. She notices it. She might not articulate it, but she feels the imbalance in her nervous system. Something in her closes. Not because you weren't giving her what she asked for, but because the way you gave it told her that you were giving it to get something back. And women, especially feminine women, are hypersensitive to that kind of need. They may not say it, but it depletes their trust in you. A man who adjusts his soul to keep a woman's attention is no man at all. He is an emotional contortionist. Flexible, impressive, but empty, and eventually exhausting. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." The modern man has no why. He has no compass. He's all tactics, no core. And that's why he suffers in love. He cannot bear her shifts, her storms, her emotions, because he's looking to her for stability. But the feminine is not stable. It's emotional weather. It rises, it falls, it softens, it burns. And it's not her job to be still. It's yours. That's what masculinity is. Not control, not dominance, stillness, direction, the mountain to her ocean. But you can't fake stillness. You can't download it. You can't become it. Which means you have to sit through the discomfort of watching her test you, pull away, cry, challenge, and not flinch. Not because you're cold, but because you're grounded. Because you're in your body. Because your sense of self is not in her hands. The man who can sit in her chaos without trying to fix it becomes the only man she can fully trust. Because he's not threatened by her storms. He's been through his own. He's stared down his shadow. He's met his own inner critic, his shame, his guilt, his softness, and he doesn't run from it. He brings all of it with him. That's the difference between being emotionally intelligent and being emotionally real. Intelligence performs. Realness integrates. And integrated men are rare because they require suffering to emerge. Nietzsche didn't trust men who hadn't suffered. He believed the strongest souls were forged in fire, not polished in comfort. And women feel that too. You can fake strength. You can dress it up, talk the part, posture in public. But you can't fake depth. Can fake the energy of a man who's buried parts of himself and dug them back up. You can fake the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't need to win the argument because he knows he can walk away from the table. You can't fake the voice of a man who says no and means it. The man who doesn't justify himself. It's the man who doesn't perform sensitivity because it's popular. Who offers gentleness because it's aligned. The man who can be still even as she raises her voice. It's not to manipulate, not to play the monk, but because his soul doesn't move when it isn't called to. That man changes a woman. Not instantly, not with words, but over time, because something inside her softens around a man who doesn't demand it. Something in her melts when he doesn't flinch in her storms. Something in her wants to lean in, not because he chased, but because he stood. But you only become this kind of man when you stop needing her to stay, when you stop needing to be chosen, when you realize that love is not earned through performance, it's revealed through presence. And presence only arrives when you've accepted that nothing real can be lost. You spend your life trying to be good enough, it's trying to win her, trying to perfect yourself for love, and you miss the truth completely. The real man isn't chosen because he's perfect. It's chosen because he's inevitable, because his presence is undeniable, because his direction is uncompromising, because he moves like he knows where he's going with or without her. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. That's what the feminine craves when she says she wants a strong man. She doesn't mean macho. She doesn't mean aggressive. She means unshakable, not cold, not disconnected, but deeply rooted in something beyond her. And if you haven't found that thing, you'll always look to her to give it to you. And she can't, because she's not your purpose. She's your reflection. She amplifies what's already there. If you're whole, she radiates. If you're empty, she escapes. You are the container, and she will only pour herself fully into what is real, not what is flawless, what is felt, what is firm, what is free. She doesn't want a perfect man. She wants one who doesn't collapse when she finally lets go, okay? She lets go, not to destroy you, but to see if you disappear, to feel if you vanish the moment she stops holding the connection for both of you. And most men do. They collapse into silence, into overthinking, into self-pity. They send long texts, ask what went wrong, okay? Beg for clarity. But the real man doesn't do that. When she lets go, he breathes. He feels the pull of old patterns, the urge to explain, to fix, to chase, but he doesn't move. He stays still, cause he understands that space is not a punishment, okay? It's a test of containment. And the man who cannot sit in the silence of a woman's emotional retreat is a man who will never lead her anywhere meaningful. She doesn't want to be your compass. She wants to feel your direction. That's the gift of the masculine, to offer certainty without control, presence without panic. Most men have never cultivated this because they've never been alone long enough to discover who they are without her. They define themselves by proximity, how wanted they feel, how desired they are, how often they're needed. And when she doesn't need them, they vanish. They stop showing up for themselves. They abandon their habits, their focus, their posture, slump into a boyish ache, hoping she'll feel guilty enough to return. But that doesn't inspire her. It repels her, because now she has to carry you emotionally. And no woman can stay attracted to a man she has to mother. This is the uncomfortable truth. Women want men who can hold their own weight, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, not because they won. Ever lean on you, but because they need to know that when they do, you won't fall apart. That when their emotions are loud and irrational and wild, you won't respond with logic or fear. You'll respond with gravity. Nietzsche's entire life was a confrontation with gravity, with depth, with despair. He once wrote that you must carry chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. Most men avoid chaos. They want control. They want peace, but they never earn it because they're too afraid to bleed for it, to descend, to face themselves when there's no audience, no reward, no woman watching. And so their strength is hollow, cosmetic. It crumbles at the first sign of emotional complexity. You'll never lead a woman if your sense of power depends on her mood. You'll never inspire her if you take everything personally. if you respond to her uncertainty with your own. She wants to feel your anchor when the winds rise. She wants to feel your center when she loses hers. She wants to know that your world doesn't collapse just because she's having a storm. That doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become clear. Not a statue, not a robot, but a man who can hold himself in her without needing her to behave a certain way. A man who listens without immediately needing to fix. A man who receives her pain without making it about himself. A man who makes her feel safer in her chaos, not smaller. That's rare. That's powerful. That's real. That you only become that kind of man by walking away from the need to be liked. From the illusion that if you just do everything right, she'll stay. Sometimes she'll leave no matter what. Sometimes she'll leave because of her own wounds. Sometimes she'll leave because she doesn't recognize how deeply she's being seen. Sometimes she'll leave because she's not ready for the intensity of your presence. And the man who needs a reason for her absence will never become whole. But the man who stays loyal to his own growth, even when she disappears, becomes more than desirable. He becomes sacred, 'cause his love is not reactive. It's not conditional. It's not fueled by her validation. It's built from something eternal, something unshakable, something that can't be taken from him, even in heartbreak. That's the kind of man she can fall apart around. That's the kind of man who doesn't lose his center when she loses hers. That's the kind of man who doesn't fear her emotions because he's no longer afraid of his own. Most men live on the surface. They've never sat with their wounds long enough to extract wisdom. They jump from woman to woman, hoping one of them will finally fill the void. But the void can't be filled. It has to be faced, felt, befriended. Nietzsche faced it, alone, with trembling, with madness. But he came back with truth. The kind of truth that doesn't sound nice, but cuts clean. And the truth is this: she doesn't want a man who lives to impress her. She wants a man who lives with such honesty that being near him is a kind of awakening. That kind of man doesn't chase. He doesn't posture. He doesn't hide his edges to keep the peace. He sharpens them, and the right woman isn't afraid of those edges. She's drawn to them because they remind her of something ancient, something wild, something worth surrendering to. But she can't surrender to a man who doesn't know how to hold. And holding isn't about control. It's about consistency. It's about making her feel, without needing to say it, that no part of her is too much, that her fire won't burn you, that her silence won't make you beg, that her wildness won't make you fold. Most men fail not because they're bad, but because they're unstable and anchored. They let her energy move them to try to fix her moods, solve her emotions, reason with her chaos. And in doing so, they reveal they've never held themselves. So how could they ever hold her? You can't lead her somewhere you've never been. You can't bring clarity if you've never lived inside confusion and stayed anyway. A man who hasn't suffered becomes clever. But a man who has suffered well becomes still. Tease, and that stillness is what she trusts. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is not withdrawal. Stillness is presence without panic. It's hearing her say she needs space and not shrinking in fear. It's hearing her anger and not matching it with your own. It's feeling her pull away and not needing to chase her to prove your worth. It's letting her feel her own gravity against that when she returns. It's by choice, not obligation. Women don't open in response to effort. They open in response to depth. And depth comes from solitude. From nights where no one checks on you. From mornings where you have nothing to prove and still you choose to rise. From facing the fact that the world does not owe you softness, and yet you remain soft in spirit and unbreakable in spine. Nietzsche's idea of strength was never loud. It was never performative. It was inner law, a code written in blood, not posted online. And the man who lives by that code doesn't explain it. He just moves by it, and she feels it. In the way you say no without guilt, in the way you keep your word without bragging. In the way you leave when you are no longer respected. Never look back. That kind of man doesn't need to intimidate. He doesn't need to charm. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his worth. He simply is. And from that being comes a clarity that reorganizes the energy around him. A woman in the presence of such a man finds herself standing taller, speaking slower, feeling more, because she no longer has to hold the frame. She no longer has to wonder where he stands. She knows, and in that knowing, her body relaxes. Not because he told her to, but because he earned it. You earn that by showing her you are not afraid of her truth, not afraid of her pain, not afraid of her fire, and most importantly, not afraid to walk away from any woman who demands you abandon yourself to keep her. When a man lives like that, women feel it. They may not always understand it. They may not always stay, but they never forget him, because he didn't just love them, he respected himself. And that energy leaves a mark deeper than romance, leaves an imprint of power, of peace, of freedom, the kind that doesn't come from getting the girl. It comes from realizing you no longer need to. You are not here to win her. You are here to reveal yourself fully and let her decide if she is ready to meet you there. And if she's not, you don't shrink, you don't chase, you don't explain. You exhale and walk on. But she can only remember who she is when you stop trying to be what she wants. You stop reaching toward her with the energy of, please choose me, and instead offer the steadiness of, I've even already chosen myself. That's what she's waiting for. It's not a man who makes her his purpose, but a man who has a purpose so deep that she feels privileged to witness it. You don't lead her by knowing what to say. You lead her by embodying something unshakable. And you don't arrive at that through imitation. You arrive there through fire, through silence, through loss, through walking away from women you once thought you couldn't live without, through sitting with yourself in the absence of applause and realizing that your value was never tied to how many hearts you won, but how fully you live in alignment with your own. Nietzsche didn't believe in seeking comfort. He believed in the transformation that only comes through confrontation of yourself, of your pain, of your need to be seen. The real man isn't afraid of being misunderstood.